Hey guys, Mid-Fi Guy here. I got another amp here for us to check out. First of all, check out my new setup. Isn't it pretty sweet? The desk was kind of a weird thing where I had to keep pointing behind me, but now I moved the little table in here, got the fancy tablecloth, and now I can like point at things while still facing the camera. Very advanced. So let's start off with what we got here. Today we got the Monoprice Monolith THX DAC amp. It has THX-AAA technology, so it's not like the SP200, which has 888, or the other ones that have 889, or even the Drop 789, but let's put it to the test, see if there's an actual difference. So first, let's get started with the volume knob on the Monolith. I just gotta say, I'm not a big fan of it at all. It's digital, so it handles all the menu options, which I guess, you know, they needed something to handle all that because it's a pretty expansive menu for a little DAC amp. But I wish they had a dedicated volume knob because you can keep going over and over infinity. So to make a big change in volume, you may have to spin it several revolutions. If you're listening at a high volume and want to go quickly down to low, you have to, you know, keep turning and turning until it's down to pretty much mute. With the SP200, you don't have that. Something like the SP200, you want mute, boom. You just turn it all the way down and you know exactly where the end is. And this is what I prefer, and I think most people would prefer something like this. Other volume knobs, they turn with authority. This one just feels like nothing's happening. Like you'll see the menu changing when I'm turning it. The menu's changing, right? Okay, good. I have my daughter helping me on this one. So it's going up and down, but it's very light and it just takes forever to get to where you want sometimes. And the EQ options, they are nice. We'll get into that later, but this is just another instance where I wish there were more buttons. You have to keep repurposing the same buttons to do different things. And for example, if I'm in the EQ and then all of a sudden there's a change in the music where it gets really loud, I found myself several times trying to decrease the volume, and that's not possible because I'm deep into the menu, so nothing's changing except for the digital display. Super annoying. So it is a pretty complex piece of equipment, and the manual is actually really great. It's clear and concise. It's about moderately long. It's not super long like the RME's ADI-2's manual, where you needed the PDF so you can actually search for terms on the computer. The printed manual for this it's not short by any means, but it's clear and concise. It doesn't overdo it. It's exactly what you need. And this time I used balanced XLR for everything. In the other video, I think one or two people were saying, why don't you use it balanced all the time instead of single-ended, at least for the SP200. So this one, I'm not compromising. I'm using balanced Mogami cables for everything. So hopefully that won't be an issue now. So one annoying thing or semi-annoying thing about this, it's not plug and play, I guess at least with Windows 10. I plugged it in via USB, it found it and everything, and it showed up in the title selector, the output selector. The thing is, it was stuck in 48 kilohertz mode, even though the songs are 44.1. So I switched to optical. It immediately switched to 44.1, so I said, well, let's just keep it in optical. But something was nagging in the back of my brain. I wanted to get USB working, so I did some reading, and you do have to download the XMOS driver. It's on the page for this amp on Monoprice's website. Just scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see a link to it. I installed that. Once I installed it, I replugged back in this DAC with the USB cable. It found it, it showed up as something different. You could rename it. I did to Monolith DAC amp. And then it was showing up as 44.1 kilohertz, no problem. So we're gonna get into the sound signature for this in a bit, but really quickly, since there's other reviews for this, you always have to do something different so people will be interested. Zeos has a great review on this. Josh Valor has an amazing review on this. So let's compare it with the SP200 really quickly. This is just an amp, and again, this is a DAC amp. This has a wall wart, and this has the power supply built in. So for this test, I tried two methods. I used the DAC inside this to power both this, and I also used the RME ADI-2 to power the amp in this, and also be the source for this. So we can test the DACs separately and also the amps. And I'll just cut to the chase. They're essentially the same. It's really hard to find a difference in the amp. They're both high quality, both have THX technology. It's not the same, of course, but even though I was struggling to find a difference between the two, if I'm just looking for strictly amp performance, I would have to pick the SP200. The SMSL, it sounds a hair clearer, and the Monolith, it seems to bring out the mids more, at least comparing to the SP200. Again, this is all just a fraction of a fraction, but with a really detailed headphone like the HD800s, you know, it'll show differences in your equipment chain, and this is the difference that I heard. Your mileage may vary, but I found this to be a tad cleaner and this to be a bit more forward on the mids. As an example, the SP200 seems to be more impactful. You feel brass instruments more, trumpets, saxophones. They come through with authority a tad better on the SP200. And I'll say this, the SP200 is just a dumb amp, D-U-M-B, but that's the way I like my amps, it's just dumb. You have one purpose, stick to your job, and shine at what you do. This does a bit more, and I can't fault it for that because it's an all-in-one unit, that's what its purpose is. But once you have separates like this, you may notice some differences, and I did, and that's why I give the nod to this just by a hair for straight amplification. Okay, now let's talk about DACs. This has two AK4490 chips inside. This has two AK4493 chips inside, so this is a generation ahead chip-wise. And honestly, when I'm comparing here, it's about the same. The Monolith DAC does sound a bit thin when you're comparing it to the RME, which tends to sound fuller. It gives more finesse to the mids, which I really appreciated. But again, these are all kind of minor changes, and for the price difference, it's definitely not worth it if you already have this. If you do already have this or thinking about getting this, definitely don't run out and buy the RME ADI-2. It's a big waste of money. Spend your money on headphones instead, or other things, but this is a very capable DAC and you will not be disappointed. So what I really love is Monolith stepped up to the plate and they included a parametric EQ in their DAC. I wish more manufacturers did that, but if anything, it made me appreciate the quality of the RME on that front much more. I gotta say, the changes in equalization for the Monolith are much more subtle when compared to the RME. Cranking the sub-bass 6 decibels on the RME is noticeably more apparent and cleaner than the Monolith. And this maxes out at 6 decibels when you're playing with the EQ. This one maxes out at 12 decibels. So much more flexibility for the parametric EQ. And something to note is even though you bypass the DAC in the Monolith and just use the analog in for its amplifier, the EQ is always on. This also applies to the digital filters and other goodies that come along with the circuitry inside. And to me, that's a negative. That just tells me some digital processing is always going on versus just a straight path to the amp. And I tested this by cranking up the bass on the RME, played some Tupac. The SP200 handled it okay. This one, the Monolith, you could see on the front panel, once I cranked up the volume, it would say overload, overload, over and over. So I could just tell some digital wizardry is going on inside, and not for the better if you're trying to bypass all the digital goodies inside. So even though the RME's AK chips inside are a generation behind the Monolith, it just goes to show that the DAC is more than just the conversion chip inside. So overall, I did hear more of a difference switching amps than I did switching DACs. So this has an amazing amp inside, so good job to Monolith. Okay, now for the fun part, the headphone pairings. My daughter said I have to add more charisma and personality and humor to my videos, so I'm gonna be more crazy now. Not too crazy. So let's talk about first the Arya, HifiMan's Arya. Super wide soundstage and stunning clarity. How could you not like this headphone? It's currently the darling of the head-fi world, under 2,000 right now. This one's the best with classical music, in my opinion, with the Monolith. And that is a bit surprising for me because usually the winner goes to the HD800s. This was apparent on the Violectric, but we're not talking about that now. It's just there to look good, okay? So don't even bring it up. People get mad when I bring this amp up with this, so I'm not going to talk about it this review. So Jazz, pop, electronic, they all sound amazing with this pairing. It's great that this has an EQ inside, so you can crank up the bass to your liking, the mids to your liking, and the Arya is more than capable of handling all the power the THX can throw at it. Really good pairing here. Everything sounds powerful, big and dynamic, and just really fun in general. It's why so many people love this headphone. And if you're still not a true believer, just listen to the first minute of Vibin' Out by FKJ. I'll put a link to it in the description, along with most other songs I mentioned here. But you listen to that song with this pairing, and tell me you won't instantly fall in love. You get details galore, you get the planar speed, and look at these drivers, they're massive. That's why you get that big open sound stage. It's pretty amazing. And crank up the EQ too a little bit, or a lot, whatever you want, but you get that low end warmth. It's like the whole package. So it's like Zeos says, it's packets of euphoria being injected directly into your brain thanks to these two. So let's put these up for now. I've talked enough about these, and let's talk about these babies. My current favorite headphone. I'll go through why in the next video, but let's talk about this pairing in particular. So we got a perfect sound stage with these Sennheisers. Not too big, not too enclosed. It's still wide, but it's not too wide. These can get a little wide. It just depends what you're in the mood for, to be honest. But this, it's really balanced, I'll say. Detail retrieval on these, as you imagine, is excellent. I listened to Kissing a Fool by Michael Buble. So the violins come in subtly around the 1 minute mark. It comes in super smooth, yet pretty apparent. You definitely hear it, but it doesn't outshine the main vocal. And this really put a smile on my face. The Arya didn't, at least with that song. So let's talk about classical with this pairing. Not my favorite pairing for classical. It was a bit too cold for me. Sounded very clinical, not as full or well-rounded as I'd like. You'd hear violins excellently, but you get the cello, the bass in the background didn't come through as nice. And it's not all just the low frequencies, it's just the big picture. It's like you hear details galore, but you need more than details for classical. And I'll say THX in general tend to be on the cold side, we know this, but it's great that you have an EQ included with this, so you can kind of round out your experience based on the headphone, based on the song, with the parametric EQ. Female vocals though, they come across silky smooth, really detailed, crystal clear, a joy to listen to. And pop, like indie chill music, some jazz, they all sounded great with this pairing. I just had to crank the EQ a little bit again on the low side, but it did sound really, really nice. And I'll say acoustic and like folk rock music, you didn't get the warmth or the impact as you do from the other headphones. The HD800 is still very kind of clinical when it comes to certain tracks, but it's still overall a great pairing, and I can't not recommend it. It's still really good with the Monolith. So we'll put these back and we'll talk about the Aeolus. Ta-da! And to me, these are the perfect tube headphone. So we're not discussing tubes here, but I just thought I'd bring it up. So it's smooth, it's full and relaxed, almost a liquid-like presentation, like it's massaging your eardrums ever so lightly. And I gotta be honest with you, classical and jazz weren't its strong suits with this pairing. Classical didn't feel as fast or as exact as I'd like, and jazz in general to me, it didn't sound natural, I'll say that. The attack and the decay of these headphones are the slowest here, so that's no surprise. And this is not a horrible headphone by any means. It's just if you're looking for those two genres, this is probably not the best pairing for it. And if you're not into classical, not into jazz, great, then you'll do just fine with this. What the Aeolus did excel at is injecting more warmth and fullness to songs. It kind of fills in the gaps. Songs where there are synthesizers used, for example. So indie, pop, folk rock music, any acoustic music, electronic, it's gonna sound great. It feels like a microfiber blanket is just surrounding your eardrums, and everything just feels warm and soothing. It's a really great experience. If you have the Aeolus and want a great demo track to kind of just enjoy these headphones with, or show off to your friends even, check out this song. I know I'm gonna mispronounce it, but here goes. It's called Ala Ogan Pamig by Darren. It's in a different language, and I have no idea what the song's about, but it sounds amazing. So I apologize in advance if it talks about or something. But anyway, it's a haunting, like, fun song to listen to, especially with these headphones. But if you like it on a solid state, try it on a tube next, and it sounds really magical. You'll see why people like tube so much with that song and this headphone. So next, let's discuss the HD6XXs from Drop/Sennheiser. And it may surprise you, or it may not surprise you, but I think this is a divine combination sent from the heavens to fill your ears with glee and happiness. I just love this combination. So THX amps, clinical, cold, sometimes called sterile. This headphone, it's known for smoothing things out, bringing attention and focus to the mids while never being fatiguing. These two combined, it's like Captain Planet with your powers combined, but I'm telling you, it is a really amazing pairing. The Monolith amp, it powers the HDs with ease, and it's just a joy to listen to. So jazz, classical, pop, folk rock, like acoustical music, those were my standout genres with this pairing. The Sennheisers, and I've said it before, it exceptionally presents the mids in a certain way that are just joyous, non-fatiguing. And the THX amp, it's sending all the details that are humanly possible to these headphones, and just the combination, it makes for a really great presentation. I could be stranded on a desert island, and if I had only one headphone pairing, it would honestly be these two, the Monolith THX DAC amp and the Sennheiser HD6XXs. I know it may be surprising to listen to with all these expensive headphones here, but it just shows that Sennheiser really created a gem with this. If you have other headphones, other more expensive headphones, and you don't have these, they're only $200. You should pick these up, see what the hype's about, plug it into your THX amp, and just enjoy. It's crazy how you can get such a modest can and have just as much enjoyment, from my point of view, as, almost $2,000 headphones. If I did have to say one negative thing about these headphones or this pairing in general, it doesn't do electronic music as well as the other ones. You don't get those super crisp highs that you get from an Arya or an HD800. So Fireflies by Owl City, we all know and love that song. Yes, you do. You just don't know it yet. You love that song. But you get your dynamic range. You get the crisp highs up at the top. You get the nice synthesizer, the low end. And this is known for smoothing things out. You get the crisp highs with everything else but this. It's still fun, it's still nice, but it's extremely fun on the other headphones. And last but not least, let's bring out our secret headphone. It's secret because it came early and I was supposed to unveil it in the next video. But if you can guess what it is, great. But I'm gonna talk about it and you'll see what it is. So you have to tune in, hit subscribe so you'll get the next video. Pretty sneaky there. But I'll go into detail about this headphone in the next one. But for now, since I have it early, let's talk about how it pairs up with the Monolith. So these headphones, super nice. I really love them. It's more of an intimate experience with these cans. They don't sound the most clear or the most natural compared to the other headphones here, but it's still a very fun experience nonetheless. Bass across the spectrum is amazingly well done. What else can I say? It doesn't distract, even though the bass is really apparent, it doesn't really distract from the mids. It's a really great effect and I really love it. The fullness is there in spades. I was struggling to find a headphone that would make the song City Love by John Mayer sound as good as it does on the RME plus 280 combo I have here. This headphone does the job with the Monolith. It's very impactful while retaining tons of details that the THX provides. Overall, it's just a really fun headphone. It's not the most precise or accurate. It's just fun, but that's what you want. It really offsets the clinical, almost sterile-like presentation from the THX amps, which makes for a good synergy. Okay, that's it for the headphone comparison. Now for the overall recommendation. Do I recommend this? Heck yes. I mean, this amp has its quirks, but for $500, you get a top-notch amplifier with the THX AAA technology. You get an amazing DAC inside with parametric EQ options, and everything's balanced. And you have analog inputs for both XLRs and RCAs if you want to reuse the amp and upgrade your DAC later. And you can also use the internal DAC inside with some RCA outs on the back. So the 5-band parametric EQ, the filter options, the sleek aesthetics, the form factor. I mean, for the price, honestly, what's not to love? If you want to look around for the $500 price point and you wanted some flexibility, consider the SP200 with an outboard DAC such as the SMSL SP200 version 2. I used to have that. Stellar DAC has filter options inside as well. Or you can also get the THX-789, the drop version. That price went down to $300 recently, so that's a heck of a buy right there. I mean, that way you could upgrade the DAC later and you have more flexibility. But in the end, it's all about the volume knob. Like these are actual volume knobs. This, no. And I will say this, I said I wasn't gonna talk about it, but you know what? I kept thinking about it. Let's bring it up. Let's create some drama, or maybe not. But some folks are saying since the THX amps measure so well, there's no point in looking at other options, especially ones that don't measure as well, yet they cost 5 times more or beyond. And to that I say distortion can be a great thing. Getting an amp to measure well is indeed, it's quite a feat, but does that automatically translate to the best listening experience? To use a comparison, it's like cooking. You can follow a recipe to the T, get it exactly like the original chef recommended, and then you get this nice dish that looks exactly like the photo and tastes like what the author wanted it to taste like. But let's face it, not everyone's the same. You may like a little bit more hot sauce on some types of food. Personally, I'm half Asian. I grew up with Asian cuisine, and if a recipe calls for a little bit of hot sauce, you bet that I'm slathering some sanjay on there. Point is, we're all different, we all have different tastes. How boring would it be if it's like, this is the sound signature everyone should listen to, it matches specs, the measurements are off the charts, everyone should be listening to this sound and that's it. How boring would that be? It's also one of the reasons why I got into tubes. It's different, it creates a fun, energetic sound, and it's great. Distortion can be a beautiful thing. So in the end, I think it's great that THX came along. I think it's amazing. They came out with this stellar technology, and they didn't increase prices, they actually decreased prices. You know, you got these boutique amp manufacturers, you have these big companies that get along by their name, and THX said, you know what, you can create a really powerful amp at a really cheap price, and here's the proof. And now we have multiple options to choose from. That said, I don't think measurements are the last word when it comes to sounding what's best to your ears. So that's it for today, everyone. I hope you like my nice little desk setup. Maybe I'll do it next time too. It's fun to like point at things in front of me versus behind. But okay, smash the like button, like the smash button, hit subscribe, and please stay tuned for the next video. I'm gonna compare these two plus a secret headphone, and maybe I'll throw in these for fun, but it's gonna be a great video, possibly my best one yet. And thanks for everyone for subscribing. I'm now over 100 subscribers. Very exciting. My family's very proud of me. But please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.